Welcome back. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Nerd Tween and Movie Podcast. I'm your host Kyle, or Nerd Pool Prime, as I'm going by now. Um, Today we're going to talk about the Mandalorian season finale. I'll give you a spoiler warning before I jump into it. And then I'm also going to talk about my theories as to who the Ass Crack Bandit is from Community. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for the whole episode today. Um, First and foremost, the season finale of The Mandalorian was unbelievable. I just want to talk about a few things about the previous episode real quick. Mayfield, he is such a great character. He really has had such a big growth in the few scenes. We've only seen him in 2 episodes, and he's been fantastic. He's stolen almost every scene, and it was just absolutely great. And I do hope that he gets his own spinoff, or at least appears in the spinoffs that are coming throughout the Mandalorian timeline. Now, the biggest takeaways from that episode was when Din was fighting those pirates. He tried to use his body to deflect the blows like he would when he was wearing his Beskar, and he realized how quickly that he needed to change that strategy up because the armor he had on was definitely not Beskar, and he tried to use his forearm to block when it shattered and it actually hurt him, and then he had to switch it up and actually start fighting in a different way. The really amazing thing that they did in that episode was they keep the whole series, especially the last couple episodes, they really pushed the thought that the Empire believes that they were the good guys. Obviously, Palpatine knew he was evil, and Palpatine used the dark side, but he was able to spin it to the point where it seemed like he was the good guy to many people, especially his followers. And I'll touch again on that when I start talking about the season finale. But they just repeatedly show that they believed it. Like when the officer was talking to Din and Mayfield, and he was talking about how the Empire is so good and this, that, and the other thing, and that how the Republic's in shambles and they're just getting stronger. Long live the Empire. And another thing, that the Operation Cinder, that's from the Battlefront game, if I'm not mistaken, and that canonizes that whole thing too, which is pretty cool. But the whole thing that when Din took off his helmet and called him Brown Eyes, then he said the TPS report. That is nothing that we've ever heard of in Star Wars, but it was in the movie Office Space. It was the meaningless reports that they just filled out just to make him feel like he was doing something. So I believe that was Bird that just kind of threw that in there, but who knows? But that scene was really interesting when he shot him and they both looked at the stormtrooper who was just standing there with his meal like, oh shit. He just leans back and shoots him. It might just be Burr's genius, but he's able to put comedy into Star Wars without forcing it, and that was one of the many pitfalls of the sequel trilogy, was that they just forced jokes just to be funny, and Burr's character Mayfield can just do it organically in the actual scene. Like when he was putting on the stormtrooper outfit, he's like, "Oh man, this guy stank. Oh, his gloves are still wet." Like it's just those little things that was inherently funny, and it was a very nice change from what Star Wars was, where it was just this space opera. Now it's more. The Mandalorian is expanding it to heights that many people probably didn't even think existed. It's really impressive what Filoni and Favreau have been able to do with the Mandalorian. And Din has found that he is willing to do anything for this kid, and that included switching his helmet. And Mayfield had a good point. You said that you couldn't take your mask off, but now you're wearing a stormtrooper helmet. So is it you can't show your face, or can you not take your helmet off? Because those are two separate things. And it was really a good thing to see that people are calling out things that don't sit well with them. They're not just agreeing to whatever it is because that's what they're supposed to do. They're questioning, like, what? That's really what you're doing? And then, of course, the tagline when he, after they got the coordinates and Din reaches out to Moff Gideon and he gives him that whole line about how you have something that belongs to me. And it was chilling. And I really enjoyed that little, like, oh, you going to try to say that to me? Well, I'm going to bring it back with you right now. And then that leads us into the season finale. Now, I will say this. Here is your one and only spoiler warning. If you're still here after this break, then you will be sorry if you haven't seen the episode, because I'm going to ruin everything for you. There'll be no surprises after I'm done. So, we're going to take a quick little break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the season finale of The Mandalorian. Welcome back. So, if you're still here, you have already heeded my warning, and you cannot complain that I spoil the Mandalorian season finale for you. So, you still here? Okay. Guess what? Wow. This was the greatest episode of the series so far, by far. The only one that even really comes close is the Ahsoka episode. But this episode, for me, is like the greatest Star Wars anything that I've ever seen as it came out. I wasn't born yet when Empire and those movies came out, but I remember feeling the same way I did watching this as the first time I ever saw Star Wars. It was just so great. So spoiler warnings all have been said. So here we go. We're going to dive right into a complete breakdown of what I thought was important in Chapter 16, The Rescue, which was directed by Peyton Reed. Okay, so the opening sequence was a hijacking of a Lambda Empire transport ship that had Dr. Pershing on it, played by Omid Abtahi. I'm sure I butchered that. I'm sorry. And I want to read a quote from him that shows why it's great that Star Wars is back now. Because people like me who have been fans for a long time can get a chance to get in it. Like Omid, he said, I remember being 10 years old and seeing a hologram for the first time and thinking, cool. And that's with 4 O's. This is a tweet, by the way. I want to be a hologram one day. Well, the galaxy responded, and now he's a hologram. And Katie Sackhoff also brought her dad to the set of the last episode. He was a lifelong Star Wars fan, so one of the things that made her so happy was to be able to bring him to the set and be live action Star Wars character. And it's just so great to see things and hear things like that. Now back to the episode. When Boba Fett is chasing him in Slave One, he hits him with an ion cannon, which basically disabled the ship. During the standoff, the Empire loyalist mentioned the millions killed on the Death Star while the galaxy cheered. And now that's something that I don't think has ever really been talked about in Star Wars, which is a fact that, yes, they were evil and doing bad things, but millions of people died on the 2 Death Stars. It's just a simple fact. and the galaxy, for the most part, was happy about that. And just the thought of how bad those people were, that millions died, and they were like, yeah, good for them. And it shows that they are driving home this fact that the Empire believes what they were doing. They were the good guys, like I said earlier. And here's another good point to that. That when he was taunting Cara Dune, he said that he saw Alderaan be destroyed, and that it was a small price to pay to rid the galaxy of terrorism. This is the evil organization that literally blew up a planet, and they're talking about terrorism? Find that hard to believe. But it shows that they literally believe that they are the good guys, which shows that, you're always the hero in your own story. So, of course, they believe that they're the good guys, when whether or not that's the truth or not is irrelevant to them. And so, moving on, when Din and Fett landed on that planet to go into that bar, you could see Bo-Katan's ship outside. And when they walked in, I don't know if you noticed, but little by little, people were starting to get out of the bar like, oh, shit. So now there's 2 more Mandalorians in here. Something's about to go down. Fett and Coscar Reeves, who is played by former WWE champion Sasha Banks. And, people talk about, like, musicians and wrestlers that can't act. I have not had a single problem with anything she's done. She's been fantastic, actually, in my opinion. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. To where earlier on in wrestlers being movie stars like Hulk Hogan, the acting was just horrible, and you were just there because you were Hulk Hogan, But no, she's holding her own. It's pretty good. I like what she's done so far. But when they were talking junk, Casca says, "I didn't know sidekicks were allowed to talk," and then Fett responds, "That's the Quacta calling the Stifling slimy." So that's definitely the Star Wars version of "that's the pot calling the kettle black." But what's funny is, in my research, I couldn't find mentions of those things anywhere else. So it's kind of like they just made it up for this, and I actually kind of like that, because this is what I've been trying to drive home. This point is that even though Favreau is adding to the mythology and the mythos of the Star Wars universe, it all just flows. You just automatically assume, yeah, that's a real thing in Star Wars. You're not like, yeah, sure, that doesn't exist. No, you just kind of like go with it, and you're totally okay with just being given new things, and it's good. It's refreshing. It adds to a story that's been going on for over 40 years at this point, and just enriching it even more. And in the episode, it was clear that Bo doesn't like Fett. Pretty much flat out saying he's not a Mandalorian, and I love his response. Never said I was. And she said that he was he dishonored the armor, and he said that his father gave it to him. And of course, Bo, knowing everything about Boba, said, "Don't you mean your donor? Because you're a clone. I've heard your voice thousands of times." And then he obviously "Careful, princess. It may be the last one you hear." And then, of course, that's when Casca can't take it anymore and throws the first punch. And, in this little skirmish, Fett seemed outmatched by Casca. Casca had him at almost every turn, even when he like got her roped up with his his scorpion maneuver, like, "Get over here." She still turned it against him, and she was beating him, and they just got to a stalemate with the with their flamethrowers until, of course, Bo broke it up, and of course, they agree to help, as long as they get the cruiser, and of course, Gideon's weapon, the Darksaber. And if that wasn't foreshadowing, and it's crazy because I'm be honest with you, I had the day off, so and I wasn't really feeling too well, so I slept like all day, and I woke up at like 2:30. Was like, oh yes, perfect. The episode's gonna come out at 3. I'm gonna watch it, then I can go to bed. And then I watched it 5 times in a row before I went to bed. And then watched another like 3 or 4 times later that day because I loved it so much. It was just the entire episode is just it's masterful. It really is. So when they're all planning how to get in there and get the child, Pershing, he tells them about the Dark Troopers. It's kind of funny, and I do like that Kara was like, basically like, oh, we're gonna listen to this guy, and he didn't lie, but it's a little weird. I think it's because of what just happened to Pershing when he was like the guy had a gun to his head. He was supposed to transport him to the wherever they were going. I'm guessing Moff Gideon's cruiser, and he just kind of just said, listen, you're gonna go in there. Here's the information. Like, yeah, it's run by a small crew, but you got the Dark Troopers to deal with, and we'll get to how unbelievably OP the Dark Troopers are in a little bit here, but during this whole that whole conversation, Fennec said, "Where are they Bofakt?" I had to look up the word. It means stay in a temporary camp without cover. We did understand what she was asking based off of how Pershing answered her, but I was still just like, what? What word is that? So now I may have said it wrong, but I gave you the correct definition. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ludwig Göransson's amazing work. The whole series so far, but this episode in particular, and really the episode where the Dark Troopers showed up is where it really became. It was unbearably apparent how much he was adding to the scenes with his music. So the Dark Trooper music is titled Troopers, and honestly, it's one of the best bits of music we've had since the Duels of the Fate. For me, it just fits, and it is perfect for what it's referencing. It just screams like dark, evil, like metal, and that's what they are. They're just these I'm calling them the Terminators of Star Wars, and Ludwig did a really good job emphasizing that. And then of course when they're flying in, they have this little exchange with Bo and Boba about making sure that the shots look real. And of course, put your shields on, princess. I'll put on a good show. and he did. It was pretty good. And Slave One's a pretty impressive ship. I don't know of many ships that can fire behind them without an extra person manning like a gun turret. It was just Fett on that ship by himself flying it, and he was able to shoot the TIE fighters behind him. That which was pretty impressive. Shows how good Fett is at I guess bounty hunting and evading captures and stealing things, I guess. But let's talk about Fennec. Yo, she that chick. And I love how little by little they're adding like martial arts to Star Wars. Started really with Rogue One, with Chirrut, the blind guy that said, "I am one with the Force. The Force is with me." And then continuing here with Fennec, the mixture of the martial arts and her like just bullseye, never miss sniper abilities, was a joy to watch. Her just dismantling stormtroopers like they were untrained farmers was really nice. And then, of course, she had to hit him with the lean back. People used to talk crap about the Stormtroopers' aim. Let me tell you, especially in The Mandalorian, their aim is on point, which further emphasizes my point that the Stormtroopers in the original trilogy were maybe not necessarily told, but through the Force, missed on purpose because Vader wanted them alive. That's my opinion, because these Stormtroopers can shoot. Okay, so now my biggest problem with the entire episode was the gun jamming. It wasn't that the gun jammed. It wasn't that she had to use it like a baseball bat, the gun. I like that. But the elevator scene for me is a problem. Because it's standard that the elevator scenes, have a bit of humor. But this was forced humor. It's not like I said earlier with Mayfield. It was funny because of what he did, not because he was trying to tell a joke. And that's how it came across in that elevator scene. And also, #feminism, #kick-ass chicks. That entire ship was taken, minus that one Dark Trooper, by a crew of elite, badass chicks. Now, that was a pleasure to see. It was a joy to watch because those four are some of the best trained fighters in the Star Wars universe at that time. 2 elite Mandalorians, an elite shock trooper, and a freaking super assassin. There's some badass chicks, and they showed it. They took that entire ship by themselves. But, now back to the elevator scene. Dank Farrick, son of a mud scuffer. Do you need some help? No, I think I got it. Just by hitting it. I mean, I feel like they could have done something better than that. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's not even an issue I have. But if I had to pick out something that didn't hit home, it was that. And not to say that it was bad per se. It's just that in an episode that was just so perfect, it is the one little dark spot, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the episode. Pardon me while I drink some Bang energy drink. Not sponsored. I just love it. Rainbow Unicorn. Believe that? Okay. So, let's talk about the Dark Troopers. It's the Star Wars answer to, what would a Terminator in space be like? And they are impressive. I mean, they're scary. They just are like these possessed killing machines that just blow through whatever it's in their path. And when Din was fighting that one, think about it for a second. What would happen to someone who was getting hit by those punches that wasn't wearing a Beskar helmet? They wouldn't have a face left. The body would have just fell down because it would have been decapitated by those punches. I mean, it was really impressive, the show of force that they had. I mean, the blast doors, later in the episode, you can see that they pushed through blast doors almost. They almost got through before the special little... We'll talk about that in a little bit. Sorry. And that when he was fighting him, he lit him on fire. He put it right where he thought the wires and stuff would be, and melt the inside. And of course, it didn't work. But that image of the Dark Trooper with the flames coming out of every freaking corner of its body, they better make that a pop figure. Because that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in Star Wars. And I feel like they would miss an opportunity to sell a ton of pops if they did that. And, so if you notice, they didn't kept shooting them initially, and it just started bouncing off. Now, in the Legends, the metal was indestructible frick, mined on the moon Gromos 16. So that's not necessarily canon, but that's what I found when I looked into it, because I'm thinking to myself, were they made with Beskar because of the Empire had a bunch of it? But no, it's not, at least not in Legends. We don't know what it's going to be like moving forward, because well, they never told us. And then, okay, so after Bo take and her boarding crew take the bridge, they realize that Gideon's not there. And of course, when after Din dispatched that one dark trooper, he moved his way on to the brig, where Grogu is being held under armed guard. Two stormtroopers, which he dispatches fairly easily with the spear of pure Beskar. He even choked that one out, just like getting some aggression out. It looked like, because he didn't need to do that. He could have just stabbed him. He didn't have to choke him out like that, but I felt like he needed to do that to get that anger out. And of course, when the door opens, you got Moff right there with the Darksaber, like ready to chop little Grogu into little sushi, whatever they are, because we still don't know what race they are. I was hoping we were going to get that answer, but it doesn't look like we're going to get it, at least not anytime soon. And Moff is a very impressive character. He seems to always be one step ahead of just about everyone. Except for late in the episode. It seems like he may have got his tutelage from Thrawn, because the way he just seems to figure things out and be able to manipulate situations to his best advantage. And Moff apparently gave him the opportunity to take the kid and leave. I don't think Din would have actually done it. I know he would have protected the kid. He would have got him, safe. But I feel like he would have ended up coming to the aid of the rest of his crew. He's just too honorable to just leave them. Even though he did say that his only goal was the child. So, maybe he would have just picked up and left. Because, Mav offered him, here, take the kid and leave my ship. And then here's a second reference in this episode about how the Imperials thought they were the good guys. When Moff Gideon was talking to Din about Bo, he's called her and her boarding crew murderous savages, and that they probably killed everyone on the bridge, which they did. And, not for nothing, the Mandalorians are kind of savages. Not in the term that you would, that Moff Gideon meant it, but like savages is like, yo, that was savage, because they're badass warriors, men, women, doesn't matter. They will kick your ass if you get in their way of their goals. That's just how it's always been for the Mandalorians, and I love that. But and then again, drives home that the Imperials, the imps, think they're the good guys. And, and I truly believe that Gideon believes that. Like, he knows how they're viewed. Like, you can tell that he understands that he's looked at as the bad guy. He uses that to his advantage. But he does believe that the galaxy needs order. And he even said that all he wanted to do was study Grogu's blood, and that he's blessed with certain properties that is going to help bring order back to the galaxy. Now, that's obviously, in my opinion, referencing the First Order and by extension the Final Order, because yes, the clone first was done, that we first saw that we later found was Snoke, was a clone. But that's just an extension of getting a clone body for Palpatine as well. So, that being said, this is filling some plot holes that may have been in the sequel trilogies for me. because we see that they were doing it even like right after the Empire collapsed. This has all been working in the shadows for numerous years. That's why it really isn't that surprising that the Emperor was able to get the final order in place, because he was moving through the shadows even when he didn't have physical form. So and in chapter 12, the siege, the clones and the clone scientists, you saw the those bodies in that liquid. They were obviously failed clones. It definitely points to that Rise of Skywalker Final Order. No way, shape, or form. Now, when we had, obviously there had to be some kind of duel, and Moff Gideon baited Din perfectly, because Gideon knows all about the Darksaber, so he forced Mando to defend himself. And I don't think at all that Moff thought he could win. I mean, there's always the chance that he could, but I don't think Moff went into that battle knowing I can defeat this well-trained Mandalorian. He had a goal in mind. And, the fight scene was choreographed amazing, and there were some shots that were just absolutely stunning. Like when Din was being pushed back, he's holding the spear up, and he's blocking the Darksaber, and it's heating up in that spot, and it's just that he's looking at between him and the blade and Moff, and it was just, it was so beautiful. And excuse me, you might be able to take the guy out of Game of Thrones, but you can't take the Game of Thrones out of the guy. He literally, it felt like the Viper of Dorne was back. And I don't know if you noticed, he even kicked it around. Like, it was true spear epicness. And of course, he disarmed him. Now, obviously he made the point that, you're taking me alive. This should be interesting. And I know I'll touch on this later, but I feel like the reason why the Empire took Mandalores for a specific reason. I'll touch on that later. Now, when Din brings Moff Gideon to the bridge, where everyone else is, he's got the Darksaber lit up. It's ignited. Now, in my opinion, I don't understand why he had it lit up. Like, why? I mean, he could definitely have shot him just as quickly as he could have sliced him, if he was worried about maybe Gideon running away. But for me, I think it was more of just, a fan service payoff. Like, yes, here you go. Here's Din holding little Grogu and has the Darksaber. It was just for that, and also to honestly sell merchandise. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that was the drive and goal of that scene, but it definitely is going to help, because now they can sell a Din Djarin with the Darksaber. Simple as that, in my opinion. And then Bo's face like, oh, no, you didn't. You idiot. And it's interesting because, when Cara Dune said that the New Republic will have to pay double on the bounty because he brought him in alive. Now, I wonder if she spoke to Din on the side and kind of made a little deal that he would bring him in alive if he caught him. And, I think that double bounty will help him get a new ship. And, he still has the ball, that Grogu played with. So I feel like that one of two things is going to happen. He's either going to buy a new, maybe a super faster ship or something like that, or he's going to get a new Razor Crest. Now, either he's going to buy one, already made, or I see him actually finding a scrapped one and rebuilding it. like to get his mind off of quote like losing Grogu, which we'll talk about. I already warned you about the spoilers, so I didn't really tell you anything you didn't know already. And it can have a really nice little montage of him putting in the work and rebuilding it, kind of like the scene in season 1 with Queel, who's played by the amazing Misty Rosas. And I've had some great interaction with her through Instagram. She's an amazing person. She's the person behind Queel and Frog Lady, the person in the suit that brings those characters to life. And she's one of the most underappreciated stars on that set to me, because those are two characters that we adore, and I don't think she gets enough attention. I've reached out hoping to try to get an interview, try to, tell her story, but haven't got a response back yet, and I don't want to be too pushy. So hopefully one day I'll be interviewing Misty on here. But, back to the episode. I digress. I have a tendency to do that. But yeah, I see him building it together, building a new Razor Crest from the ground up, basically. And then the last thing is he screws on that ball, and it's like, and just, you can just see him kind of looking off in the distance, assuming he's looking off in the distance because you can't see his face, or maybe we will moving forward. Who knows? And I think that'd be a nice little callback to Grogu if he's not present moving forward. All right, now, so the Children of the Watch, which is what Din Djarin, his sect of the Mandalorians, where they don't take off their helmets, and, this is the way, and all of that stuff, living in the coverts, underground, with the armor. They obviously picked and chose what parts of Mandalorian history they were going to tell the foundlings. Now, I don't know if any of the ones that were pure Mandalorians knew everything, but the foundlings definitely didn't, because Moff Gideon definitely knows more about the Darksaber than Din does, and he's a Mandalorian. Maybe a foundling, but he's still a Mandalorian. And he just didn't know about this artifact. The Darksaber was created by the first Mandalorian Jedi eons ago, and it basically gives the wielder claim to the entire Mandalorian throne and rule Mandalore, and he didn't know that. So it's clear that the Children of the Watch definitely weren't telling everyone the entire story. And it doesn't, he didn't realize that this Darksaber that he's holding in his hand is basically the Excalibur for the Mandalorians. He's now King Arthur, and he didn't even realize it. And that is why Gideon baited him and wanted this to happen, because he knew at that point that it was over and he was going to get captured. So in doing so, he was going to make sure that Bo-Katan's plan did not go how she wanted, and he could give her one last screw you, if it was going to be the day that he's captured or dies. So Din just tries to give her the Darksaber. He goes, "It's yours now. The Darksaber's yours." And he, powers it off and says, and now it's hers. And she looks at it, wanting to grab it, but she doesn't. And Moff starts laughing, and he's like, "Well, it doesn't work like that." And, this is part of my theory as to why the Empire got Mandalore. Because last we saw, even though they had Mandalore, the Bo had just received the Darksaber from Sabine, and they were going to go try to take back Mandalore, and that was the last we saw. Now, the line that Moff said, he looks directly at her and says that without the Darksaber, she is a pretender to the throne. And so in Rebels, Sabine actually finds the Darksaber on Dathomir, where Darth Maul, or he's just going by Maul at that point, left it. And then she gave it to Bo. So what I'm thinking is that yes, she had the Darksaber, but it failed to unite the Mandalorians under one banner and her as the ruler. So they were still fighting amongst themselves and were not able to defeat the Empire. And that is part of the reason why they lost. And I'm guessing she lost the Darksaber in a battle with maybe Moff, maybe, or who knows who she lost it to. But she had it at like the last we saw her. And she's like, I'm sure the Mandalorians felt even more blame towards Bo because the Empire's presence on Mandalore was brought in by Bo. In the Siege of Mandalore, when the clone troopers were still the clone troopers and not the stormtroopers of the Empire, she brought them in to get Maul off the throne. And now, was that the wrong decision? Absolutely not. He was a tyrant and he had to be taken. He didn't belong as the king of Mandalore or the ruler of Mandalore. But still, I'm sure the Mandalorians blame her. After Order 66, the Empire was already had a foothold in Mandalore because all those troops were there. And they were just, turned on. And then, this whole time, and, that's why I believe that's what happened, because when he says that she can't just take it, it's all about the story. She looks at him, thinks about it, and begrudgingly admits he's right. So I think that's why she wouldn't take it now, is because she did that once already and it didn't work. So we're obviously going to have to that's going to have to be resolved moving forward. And then, there goes the alarms, and the ray shields have been breached. How many life forms? None. And then here comes that music again, hyping everyone up. Now, I will admit, when the Dark Troopers were flying back, it totally had a Doom bot or Sentinel vibe, that they just had this one drive and just one ultimate goal, and they were gonna fulfill it no matter what. The ship was under attack, and they had to go stop it. And they were gonna kill him. There was no way, not even with the Darksaber and even with the Beskar spear. I'm sorry, there's no way that they could have got out of there. And Moff Gideon even says, you have an impressive fire squad protecting you, but when this is all said and done, the only people that are going to be left alive in this room is me and Grogu. Well, he said the child. Because he actually doesn't know that his name is Grogu. That's interesting. I just thought of that. And then a lone X-Wing shows up. And let me tell you, when I saw that, my anxiety spiked so much that my licensed therapy animal jumped up out of sleep and wanted to see what was wrong, because I was so anxious. I was like, wait, it's a lone X-Wing. Oh, no way. And then, when Kara said, oh, a lone X-Wing, oh, we're saved. You definitely didn't look, that comment does not age well. Within a few minutes, you look stupid. Should just kept your mouth shut, Kara. But the second I saw that hooded figure, the black hood, I knew, and I screamed. I swear that every fiber of my being lost it. It really made me feel, like I said earlier, like the first time I saw Star Wars. It just must have been exactly how people felt walking out of Empire, seeing in the theaters the first time. This scene, and I did like the little subtle thing when the second the X-Wing docked, Grogu's ears perked up, like, oh, sense of disturbance in the Force. Something very powerful just showed up. And then again, I know I sound like a broken record, but Ludwig killed it again with a friend. That song that started playing once Luke started walking, it just fits so well. It just screamed, "The hero has arrived to save the day." And that's exactly what he did. It just his music is just adding just so much contextual feeling to the scenes. It gives you an emotion, and that's what good music like this does for films. It accentuates the action or the scene at hand, because it wasn't all action. There were subtleties in how, when he was walking, you just see the gloved hand with the green saber, and it, it was just it was really well done. And I'm saying it now. He better be the person that they deem responsible for picking up where John Williams left off, because he's retired now. You better give him that job, because he is slaughtering it on the Mandalorian right now. This episode with the two songs combined, the Trooper and the friend track, it definitely compares to some of the best music we've ever seen in Star Wars. It individually they're not, but together in the same episode, it definitely ranks for me. And oh man, how truly beautiful was seeing Luke in his prime. He was destroying those dark troopers like they were the regular droids in the Phantom Menace that were attacking the Naboo. Like the regular battle droids. And he just destroyed them like they were nothing. And he was literally just, I keep saying, like, it was nothing. It was, and then Gideon, you see him see that, and that's when he, sprung into action and tried to kill Bo and Grogu, and he definitely had original trilogy Stormtrooper aim, because he shot Bo enough times to have hit at least one shot that wasn't in the pure Beskar. I mean, the Beskar armor is not a full suit; it's just plates. So he let off a whole bunch of shots and didn't get her once. I mean, it's not that impressive. Unless he was only trying to make it look like he was. That's a possibility as well. He might be playing the whole system all over again. And, when the original... Okay, so when he tried to kill himself, I feel like he had enough time to pull the trigger. I think it was just meant to look like he was trying to kill himself. But it did have that scene felt like the Zemo and Black Panther scene in Captain America Civil War. The living are not through with you yet. Rest in power, Chadwick. Okay, so, and then that could have just been an editing thing where it just looked like there was more time in between when he pulled up the gun and when Kara hit him. But also another thing I thought about, maybe he wanted to make sure that he didn't see the Jedi, because maybe he has to answer to someone, and at least this way it said, I didn't see the Jedi, I don't know who it was. So he couldn't be responsible for, delivering that message to whoever it was. So during this scene, Grogu reaches out and touches the screen. And my brother, who from this day henceforth will be known as the Dungeon Master, had an interesting theory that maybe Grogu and Luke were connected, and that he was maybe getting like visions from Grogu, seeing where everything was, where everyone was lined up, because what Grogu was seeing through the screens. Well, I'm not saying that's not the case. What I will say is it wouldn't have mattered. It doesn't matter. That's just how powerful Luke was. The droids didn't stand a chance. They really didn't. There was no way that they were going to land a shot. And, I remember when I saw Rogue One and that Darth Vader scene at the end, I remember thinking, there's no way. There's no way that will ever be topped as the most badass scene in Star Wars. And then here comes Luke. Hold my beer. There had to have been at least like 20, I'd say about 20 of those Dark Troopers, and he just mowed through them. And like, even that last one, when he crushed it, he didn't have to do that. He was just showing off at that point. He had him by the Force. He could have just, saber right through the head and be done with it. No. He wanted to crush it just to, and like my brother said, you just had to flex on him, man. That's the first thing. You got to flex on your enemies. And it's like, one man against all those Dark Troopers. That's got to be, pretty difficult, right? And, as Ryan George will probably say when he does a pitch meeting for this, no, actually, it was super easy, barely an inconvenience. And just that, it seems that, how you make a really badass scene? Put one badass fighter in a hallway. I mean, look what happened, on Daredevil and the Punisher. Some of the greatest, moments were those hallway scenes that were just so amazing. Or, the staircase scene in Winter Soldier. Oh, no, not in Winter Soldier. In Captain America Civil War. And it was just so, so badass. I sound like a broken record. I'm still beside myself. I've watched it at least 15 times at this point, and I still get goosebumps and my hair raises, and it's just like, oh, man. All right, and now let's talk about CGI Luke face. Now, from what I've been hearing is Mark Hamill was actually on set and did that there, and they just either de-aged him or superimposed a digital face onto it to make him young. But I don't. It wasn't perfect, but I don't care. I really don't. And anyone who's complaining about how Luke looked, get over yourselves. It was amazing. Can't you just get past a minor imperfection to get that beautiful scene with Luke just destroying all those Dark Troopers? Seriously, the Star Wars fandom is really toxic, and it needs to get over itself and just enjoy this great content we're getting. Oh, and I don't ever want to hear anyone say that Disney is ruining Star Wars. And you can say that maybe they ruined it or whatever, and that Filoni and Favreau are saving it. By all means, fine, but they work for Disney. Therefore, Disney is not ruining Star Wars. Let's get that straight. But now one other thing I will say is the way it was shot, the angles that they used, it can definitely be replaced later with an actor if they do decide to go that route. I believe that there may be a young Kylo, a Rise of Kylo series that will kind of follow the comics that have come out, which is pretty cool. I haven't read all of them, so I'm not sure how that story completely plays out. But I do think that they might do something like that. And, we've been fan casting him for forever. Sebastian Stan, man, if they do a young Luke, you gotta do it. Get Sebastian Stan. And, also I would say get Carrie Fisher's daughter to play young Leia. And, have her there as well. And do honor to these characters. Because if not, they're missing a huge opportunity, in my opinion. But we'll go back to the episode. So, there's Luke. Yes, I'm a Jedi. Come with me, little one. And he doesn't want to leave, according to Mando. And, he gives him, he said, because he wants you to give him permission. Oh, man. And that scene, I'm sorry. If you didn't cry at this episode, you are more dark side than Emperor Palpatine at his darkest. Okay, I'm sorry because when Grogu reaches up and touches the helmet, you just knew, and then the music changed again. Music adding to a scene, um, and takes off his helmet. And all the props in the world to Pedro Pascal because that scene showed just how talented of an actor he is. Because you know, as the character, his face had not been touched by anything but maybe his own hand when he washed his face and the helmet. And when Grogu touched him, he shuddered, he was kind of like, oh, wow. And it was an amazing performance, and you felt it. I felt it in my soul, and it broke me down into tears. But let me be honest. When I watched the episode the first time, I started crying the second I saw the hood because I felt like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Yeah, oh my God, they got Luke somehow. And then as it just got progressive, then just pure on waterfalls at that point. once he touched his face, it was a wrap for me. And Grogu didn't want to go still. He told him, don't be afraid. He's your kind. You need to go with him. He was still holding on to his leg. There's that old saying, like, he, even with Din's permission, he had a lot of indecision, but in the end, he was able to, let go of that which you fear to lose. Once he saw R2-D2. And his reaction, almost like mine, when I was, oh my God, R2! I don't know why I didn't expect him to show up, but it was such a pleasant surprise and a welcome one. And, when R2 saw this child, like, when I saw R2, the inner child, version of me screamed out through the nerd time continuum. And it was just a moment of pure joy. And, in my opinion, R2-D2 is the true hero of the Skywalker saga. Not Luke, not Rey, R2-D2. But that's an entirely other episode, which will be coming soon. And all right, so with R2's reaction, with him waddling around, and Luke's reaction, it was just so heartfelt because you got to remember that Yoda just died less than a decade ago in that part of the timeline. So, and Luke, I don't think knew that there were any other creatures of Yoda's species because I don't think he knew Yaddle, who was around in canon during the Empire. And during The Phantom Menace, and then never be seen again on screen. In the Legends comics, she actually saved Anakin by sacrificing herself, which that was something that Anakin blamed himself for. But once Grogu saw R2, along with what he sensed from Luke, he knew, and he raised his hands, and Luke picks him up. And, hearing Mark Hamill's voice and him saying, "May the Force be with you," it just felt so good. So good. And they did give us the most wholesome image in all of Star Wars. Prime Luke holding Grogu with R2 at his side, about to embark on their journey to become a Jedi. The feels. The feels. And I'm hoping that everyone stayed in the room and was in awe like I was and saw that there was a mid-credit scene. You go to Jabba's palace. Bib Fortuna has now taken over command. Now, I don't know if he's just, taking up residence there, or if the Hutts gave him power, or if the Hutts council that we saw in Rebels is disbanded by that time. We're not really sure. We'll find out later, I'm sure. And because, not too long ago, Jabba was killed by Princess Leia in her slave outfit, slave bikini. um, so, Fennec, obviously makes quick work of all of the goons that Bib had there, and then, kills everyone besides Bib and the Twi'lek slave. Of course, she, frees the slave, and the slave runs away. And, of course, Boba walks in. Bib tried, to talk his way, grease the wheels. Oh, it's been so long. I heard rumors. I thought you were dead, and all that good jazz. And of course, Boba just shoots him. No warning, just kills him instantly. After Boba flings Bib out of the way, he places his rifle next to the throne and sits, assuming the residence of the Hutt Palace. Fennec grabs a bottle of what I'm guessing is spatchka, takes a swig, gives him this little smirk of, yeah, I'm your right-hand woman. And, Boba Fett, he demonstrated a lot of honor in these episodes, but he also is still a scoundrel bounty hunter. He just, is very honorable in how he does things because of how he was brought up. So we're going to get both the Mandalorian Season 3 and the Boba Fett series titled The Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus, December 2021. So, gosh, we have to wait a full year for these stories to continue. I don't know how I'm going to cope. I do know that WandaVision is certainly going to help. And the other Disney Plus, Captain the Winter Soldier and Loki, that's definitely going to help. And, all the movies are coming out next year. But now let's go some theories and how we're moving forward. Because, you got to think about it. Super Luke, which I'm dubbing him Super Luke, and Grogu leaving kind of made everyone forget about this giant cliffhanger they left us on. What's going to happen to Moff Gideon? Are they going to bring him in? Or, is he going to go try to kill himself again? Who knows what's going to happen there? Is Din going to join Bo-Katan's campaign to, retake Mandalore? And, how's that dynamic going to work? Because Din right now has the rightful claim to the Darksaber and by extension the throne of Mandalore, which is Bo's ultimate goal. And I do believe now we are definitely leading towards the Siege of Mandalore Part 2 in live action. And I'm so stoked if that is what's going on. Because I think that the Empire is using Mandalore as a super secret base, kind of like they did on Geonosis in the Clone Wars, where they just eradicated the entire indigenous life and created super weapons on the planet without anyone knowing. I believe that's the same that's happening on Mandalore. I would bet it's either a cloning facility or they're mining Beskar or something like that to create super soldiers or a super plane or something along those lines. Ship. Maybe they're starting to build the Final Order's fleet. Who knows? But I definitely believe that there's something going on Mandalore that the Empire was keeping under wraps that no one knows about. And okay, so in this Mandalorian timeline, we're going to have soon the Star Wars Ahsoka series with Rosario Dawson, Filoni, and Favreau. Oh my God, I'm so excited for that. Rangers of the Republic, the Mandalorian Season 3, and the Boba Fett series, we believe, will all be set in the same timeline. So I think they're going to all warp together to tell one cohesive story about how the New Republic had the chance to end the First Order before it started and failed. Excuse me. Maybe Thrawn is on Mandalore. I mean, I don't know if I like that, because I like the thought that he is still off in the unknown regions, trying to escape capture by probably Ezra. And I bet the first place we'll see a live-action Ezra will be the Ahsoka series. But, again, as I keep saying, Jon Favreau deserves the utmost respect and praise and everything that there can be, because think about this for a second. He started the MCU and literally, quote unquote, saved Star Wars with The Mandalorian. I mean, he is just a amazing storyteller and deserves every single bit of any praise and anything he gets. And I'm saying this right now. When Kathleen Kennedy steps down, Filoni better be the head of Lucasfilms. I mean, I'm sorry. Well, Filoni could do a really good job as well. Don't get me wrong. But I think Favreau would be the best to head up the Lucasfilms division, because it's clear that he can tell a cohesive story with different directors. I think he should definitely be the Kevin Feige of the Star Wars universe. And it'll be funny because Feige's working on helping produce a Star Wars movie, I believe. So it'll be funny if they do give that to Favreau, and then Feige has to come work for him one day, and then go back the other way and swap again. But the Mandalorian season finale was by far, in my opinion, just they nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. They kept it under wraps. I didn't hear a single rumor about Luke showing up. How did they do that? How did they get that? You know what they probably did? They probably didn't do the editing of who it really was until after. I think about it, because Din and them didn't ask what his name was. They just asked if he was a Jedi. So maybe they didn't know it was Luke. That would make sense. But yeah, the Mandalorian is fantastic, and if you haven't watched it, obviously I just ruined everything for you. But moving forward, I can't wait to see where they take this story next, because it can literally go anywhere at this point. But that'll wrap up the Mandalorian talk for right now. I'm going to take another short, quick break here, and I'll come back and talk about who was the Ass Crack Bandit in Community. Welcome back. So, who is the Ass Crack Bandit, or the ACB? In my opinion, there's actually two ACBs. Abed and Annie. So, the reason why I think it's Annie is I think she was the original Ass Crack Bandit. She was the one that started it, and she kept all the articles, as trophies. And the other thing is, she is so meticulous and into forensics and forensic science and all that stuff. So it definitely is something that she could pull off and get away with. And now Abed, the main reasons why I think he is at least a Ass Crack Bandit is he had way too many blankets and cups made up for Troy. All the blankets, you can get that real quick. But to fill up all those individual cups of water that he had, that takes planning. And that takes being ready for something that no one knew was going to happen. And also, he removed himself from the investigation, and we all accepted it as him just being Abed, and as he said that, it's a trope and it's a lazy writing technique, and he just disappears for most of the episode. So that, that is partially why I think he is the Ass Crack Bandit. Now, the main reason why Annie at some point was the Ass Crack Bandit is because the last episode, when they talk about it, Annie laughs, and and that was in the final episode, the emotional consequences of broadcast television, which was the series finale. In the script, it actually says Annie was probably the Ass Crack Bandit, and her answer, yeah. So to me, I think that is unequivocally proof that she at least at one point was the Ass Crack Bandit. And besides, the earlier points, my biggest reason why I think that the Ass Crack Bandit, at least at one point, was Abed because of the 3 cracks in a row. Annie said that even though running, she couldn't do it, so she automatically assumed it might have been a teacher. But we all know that the best athlete on campus is Abed. And that was proven in Season 1, Episode 11, The Politics of Human Sexuality. Everyone, just assumes that Troy's the best athlete because, he was a superstar football player in high school and all that. But he beats Troy. Abed beats Troy at basketball, carnival games, and then in an epic arm wrestling contest. And then, when Dean says that someone has to go warn everyone about the holes in the condoms from the STD fair, Troy says, no, the best athlete is Abed, and he runs and tells the school. So that, to me, he definitely would have been able to do those 3 crackings and still had plenty of time to spare because he was so fast. But there's always the theory that there was multiple, Ass Crack Bandits, even more than 2. That there was a whole bunch of copycats just trying to get on the act. There was definitely some people who benefited from another Ass Crack Bandit spree, like Shirley. She made a killing at Shirley sandwiches because she wouldn't give change. So she even said at one point, "Sorry, no change. Blame the Ass Crack Bandit." And then, Chang also, it made him not the bad guy for once, and it gave him a purpose. He was actually able to, help in his own crazy way. Duncan also, he could have felt needed because, he's the psych professor, and, he was asked to assist on the investigation because, his ability to psych profile. And then, obviously Britta fueling her anarchist needs, to rebel against society, and even though she shouldn't. But another reason why I think the Ass Crack Bandit is Abed is because in the scene in the library when there was a cracking, I'm drawing a blank on who it actually was, but you can see the figure, and he's kind of tall. I don't think there's any way anyone but Abed or Jeff, obviously it wasn't Jeff, could be that person that we see in the background. And, another reason where you can say that maybe it was Annie all along, maybe she got Abed to help her. Maybe it was their like little inside thing that they were doing. But you could definitely make the case that Annie orchestrated it so she can get closer to Jeff, because she loves Jeff and Jeff loves her, and they should end up together, but the age difference was kind of creepy to a lot of people, so that obviously didn't happen. So in summation, if you ask me, there was at least 2 Ass Crack Bandits. Both Abed and Annie at different times portrayed the Ass Crack Bandit, and I think in the episode where there was another spree, it was Abed for sure. And the reason why Annie was so hell-bent on finding who it was is because she wanted to know who was the copycat if she didn't orchestrate it. But in the end, we may never know. Maybe we'll see that in the movie. Maybe when the movie happens, one of them will step forward and be like, I was the Ass Crack Bandit. And, they may do the Spartacus thing like they did in that Model UN. I farted. I'm the Ass Crack Bandit. I'm the Ass Crack Bandit. And that's definitely something that could happen. And, again, I just hope that we get this movie soon because I think like the community fandom needs it. I will admit that the community fans seem to be a lot more engaging everywhere I look, and they're growing more and more by the day. And I really hope that you know that they get it done. Because people are starting to lose hope, and that's one thing in 2020 that we definitely don't want to lose hope. Um, but that's gonna wrap it up for the Ass Crack Bandit talk. And before I get out of here, I want to talk about a few things. First of all, I did a promotion for Water for People. They're a great non-for-profit organization that is trying to bring sustainable water to people all around the world who don't have it. I don't know about you, but every time I think about what they're doing, it's like, I don't know about you, but I can walk into my kitchen, turn on my faucet, and get water. I mean, I have a Brita filter, so even if there was any toxins in that water, I can filter it out. I mean, I can wash my hands without worrying about, am I wasting water washing my hands when I could be dying of thirst? Water for People, they legit are trying to save the world. I first heard about them during the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World water crisis live table read, which was amazing. It was one of the best table reads that I've ever seen. Because it wasn't live, it was pre-recorded, so they had a lot of they did a lot of editing for it. And the original creator of the comic was drawing things that they were giving away during the table read. And it was masterfully done, and I don't know if it's still available to see, but if it is, definitely go try to check that out. It's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Water Crisis. But again, like I said, if you can, please do me a favor and go just research Water for People on Instagram. That's literally at Water for People, no spaces, no underscore, and just see. That's what I did. I got hooked from that Scott Pilgrim thing because I'm a huge nerd and a huge fan of that. And then I did some research and found out who they were. And like I said, that they're really trying to save the world and bring sustainable water to everyone who needs it all across the world. And I'm a huge supporter. They contacted me and asked me to tell them my story, why I still support them. And I'll do it again in a heartbeat. And I just hope that everyone who's listening, if you can, please try to help out Water for People in their efforts to bring sustainable water to everyone who needs it. And in 2020, with COVID and everything that's going on, that's something that we desperately need to help out if we can. And again, if you can, go support your local comic book stores because they need help more than ever with COVID. So if you can support them, please do. And this will be the last episode for the year. I'm gonna take a break from doing the episodes and work on giving you a full rounded experience. I'm starting a YouTube channel, getting videos up there. Facebook as well, Twitter. You can just on Twitter it's at Nerdtween, and then on Facebook it's just just search for Nerdtween and Movie Podcast. There's nothing up on YouTube yet. That's what I'm gonna be focusing on. I'm gonna break up all the episodes into little chunks, divided up by sections, so they'll be a little bit smaller chunks, so you can listen to at a time, pieces at a time. And so, since this will be the last time I talk to you before the new year, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's listened and given me well wishes, and just telling me that this is something that you want. It's really gratifying to me, not only just be able to talk about it, but to hear positive feedback or even negative feedback. I haven't heard any of that yet, but I'm sure I will eventually once it starts to take off. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, from just my nerdy soul really thanks you. And I want to say, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, everything, and be safe. I know New Year's is coming up, and everyone's gonna want to go out and party and everything, but just make sure you wear a mask and stay safe. And there's a lot more coming for you guys from Nerd Tween and the movie podcast coming in January. I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, stay nerdy, my friends, and be safe. I'll see you in January. Hey, are you still here? If you are, congratulations. You're going to hear the first ever post-credit scene for Nerd Tweet and Movie Podcast. I wanted a little just piggyback on what I was talking about earlier. One of my theories that I didn't talk about earlier was what happened to Grogu and why we haven't seen him in the sequel trilogies or anything like that yet. I feel like the only answers is that he's off in exile somewhere, much like Yoda was, that Luke sent him to train on his own, or Kylo killed him. And that would make that scene in which one was that? And then the second of the Rian Johnson Star Wars movie, where you see the temple on fire and it's just R2 and Luke, and he's like has that no, everything died because he couldn't save Grogu, and maybe because he promised that to Din, once he didn't give his life to protect him, that was the final straw, that he had to put himself in exile. And that could be something that they touch on if they do a Kylo Ren Rise of Kylo Ren spinoff like they have in the comic series out now. That'd be pretty cool. And also, I just wanted to let you know that there will be a interview also with a comic book creator that will also be loaded this week. So again, thank you so much, and I'll see you in January. Now go celebrate with your families and have a good time. I forget about it.